Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja
Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupagada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavam Stam Sri Rupam Sagra Jatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vidhantam Sajivam Svadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devi Saraswati Vyasa.
Tato Jayamudiraye Nasta Presho Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Shevaya Bhagavad Utama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. So today, March 5th, Thursday, 2026. A reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, The Creative Impetus, Chapter number 2, The Activities of Maharaja Agnidra. I'm going to skip the chapter summary. However, it does have the word mellifluous in it. Who knows the meaning of the word mellifluous? It's speaking about the voice of a beautiful heavenly damsel. Mellifluous means it's melodious and very pleasing. So this is also in a non-shloka format, prose, Sanskrit prose. Shri Shuka Uvacha Evam Vitali Sampraviteta Anushashane Vardhamana Agnidro Jambudvi Paukasha Raja Aurushavad Dharmak Vikshamanaha Paryagopayat. The synonyms, please repeat. Sri Shuka.
Sri Shuka.
Sri Shukadeva Goswami.
Sri Shukadeva Goswami.
Uvacha.
Uvacha.
Said. Evam.
Evam.
Thus. Pitari.
Pitari.
When his father.
When his father.
Sampravrite.
Sampravrite.
Took to the path of liberation.
Took to the path of liberation.
Sat Anushashane.
Anushashane.
According to his order.
According to his order.
Vartamanaha.
Vartamanaha.
Situated.
Situated.
Agnidra.
Agnidra.
King Agnidra.
King Agnidra.
Jambudvipa Okasha.
Jambudvipa Okasha.
The inhabitants of Jambudvipa.
The inhabitants of Jambudvipa.
Rajaha.
Raja.
Citizens.
Citizens.
Urulasavat.
Orasavat.
As if they were his sons.
As if they were his sons.
Dharma.
Dharma.
Religious principles.
Religious principles.
Avikshamanaha.
Avikshamanaha.
Strictly observing.
Strictly observing.
Paryagopaya.
Paryagopaya.
Completely protected.
Completely protected.
Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Sri Shukadeva Goswami continued, after his father, Maharaja Priyabrata, departed to follow the path of spiritual life by undergoing austerities, King Agnidra completely obeyed his order. Strictly observing the principles of religion, he gave full protection to the inhabitants of Jambudvip as if they were his own begotten sons. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Following the instruction of his father, Maharaja Priyabrata, Maharaja Agnidra ruled the inhabitants of Jambudvip according to religious principles. These principles are exactly contrary to the modern principles of faithlessness. So there is a clear distinction between traditional Dharma and the modern nonsense. As clearly stated here, the king protected the citizens the way a father protects his begotten children. How he ruled the citizens is also described here. Dharma Bhikshamanaha, strictly according to religious principles. It is the duty of the executive head of a state to see that the citizens strictly follow religious principles. The Vedic religious principles begin with Varnashrama Dharma, the duties of the four Varnas and the four Ashramas. Dharma refers to principles given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Notice that verse. Dharmam tu shakshat bhagavat pranitam. Navai Vidura Rishi Napi Deva, that real religious principles are enunciated by the Lord. And that is spoken by Yamaraj to his Yamaduta associates. The first principle of Dharma, or religion, is to observe the duties of the four orders as enjoined by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to people's qualities and activities, society should be divided into Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, and then again into Brahmacharis, Grihastas, Anaprastas, and Sannyasis. These are religious principles, and it is the duty of the head of state to see that his citizens strictly follow them. He should not merely act officially. He should be like a father who is always a well-wisher of his sons. Such a father strictly observes whether his sons are performing their duties, and sometimes he also punishes them. Just contrary to the principles mentioned here we have it, description of what's going on. The presidents and chief executives in the age of Kali are simply tax collectors who do not care whether religious principles are observed. Indeed, the chief executives of the present day introduce all kinds of sinful activity, especially illicit sex, intoxication, animal killing, and gambling. These sinful activities are now very prominently manifested in India. Although 100 years ago, these four principles of sinful life were strictly prohibited in the families of India, they have now been introduced into every Indian family. Therefore, they cannot follow religious principles. In contrast to the principles of the kings of old, the modern state is concerned only with propaganda for levying taxes and is no longer responsible for the spiritual welfare of the citizens. Separation of church and state, that's called. The state is now callous to religious principles. Not only they have this idea of separation of church and state. This is like nothing for the church. Everything for mundane activities and sense gratification. Oh, you can't give any money to the religious principles. The state is now callous to religious principles. Srimad Bhagavatam predicts that in Kali Yuga, the government will be entrusted with Dasyu Dharma, which means the occupational duty of rogues and thieves. Modern heads of state are rogues and thieves who plunder the citizens instead of giving them protection. Rogues and thieves plunder without regard for law, but in this age of Kali, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, the lawmakers themselves plunder the citizens. The next prediction to be fulfilled, which is already coming to pass, is that because of the sinful activities of the citizens and the government, rain will become increasingly scarce. Gradually, there will be complete drought and no production of food grains. People will be reduced to eating flesh and seeds, and many good spiritually inclined people will have to forsake their homes because they will be too harassed by drought, taxation, and famine. The Krishna conscious movement is the only hope to save the world from such devastation. It is the most scientific and authorized movement for the actual welfare of the whole human society. Mukum karoti vachalam bhangam lagayate girim jatkripa tamaham bande nigurum dinatarinum. So Srila Prabhupada really gets into it and lays out the actual situation, what's going on in the world. And by hearing these instructions and observing what's going on around us, we can see this is actually the fact. Bhagavad Gita explicitly states that in human society, sacrifice has to be performed. That work as a sacrifice to Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, lokoyam karma bandhanaha, work without being performed as a sacrifice causes bondage in the material world. And when sacrifice is being properly performed, then the demigods are pleased that things are going on nicely. Rain is regularly given, and human society requires that rainfall. Why? To produce grains. And then the grains are also offered in sacrifice and taken as prasadam. And this whole cycle of sacrifice and rains and producing foodstuffs is the complete and natural system for the smooth functioning of humanity. But now it is being very much disturbed because what? There's no sacrifice. And the governments are no longer, the heads of the governments, especially Prabhupada refers to here, the chief executives, they're only not interested in ensuring that the citizens are performing their religious duties. They're completely callous. As a matter of fact, to the contrary, they're interested in introducing the activities of illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling. Intoxication is big business. You know, who makes a lot of money? Beer. Sell a lot of beer. And a lot of football games that sell a lot of beer. Life's good. And this is regulated and encouraged by the government. Yes, sell more beer. Everybody's happy. Keep them happy. If they don't drink any beer, they'll start to think, wait a minute, what's wrong with my life? If they're drinking the beer, then there's no concept of what's wrong with my life. The only concept is, yeah, party, more beer. And that's what's going on. So the government encourages that. And now they've become, they've legalized, just in our lifetimes, they've legalized gambling to the point where anyone with a phone can bet on the sports gambling. And it's become very big business. But many people are getting their lives ruined by being addicted to that gambling. Just like they say, drink responsibly. Yeah, no, drink unlimitedly is what people are thinking. And then bet responsibly. Yeah, you become, all jacked up thinking I'm going to win some money, and then you end up losing all your money, right? And this is encouraged by the government. What to speak of meat eating. But Srila Prabhupada points out that 100 years ago in India, none of these things were happening in the cultured families. No meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling. When Srila Prabhupada was a child, some of the members of his family wanted to send him to England for education to become a lawyer. And his father was completely against that. No, I don't want him to go to England. If he goes to England, he'll do what? He'll learn meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, and gambling. those are the four primary irreligious principles observed by the British, the general British population. So, no, don't send him to England. I want him to stay home and be a pure devotee. That worked out pretty good for us, didn't it? Of course, Srila Prabhupada never would have become anything other than what he was, because he's a pure devotee of Krishna who was sent by Lord Chaitanya to spread his movement all over the world. That's the reason for Prabhupada's appearance. It's not that he's accidentally, he was pharmaceutical salesman from Bengal and he just lucked into starting his own religion or something like that. Success story, from rags to riches. No, not at all. It's nothing to do with anything. That's just a material vision. He's a pure devotee of Krishna. Kali Kaler Dharma Krishna Nam Sankirtan. The religious principle practice for this age of Kali is Krishna Nam Sankirtan, the congregational chanting of the holy name of Krishna. And Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi, Tarpavartana. No one can spread the Krishna consciousness movement unless they have Krishna Shakti. Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi. Unless one is specifically empowered by Krishna Shakti, you can't spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. So we can understand, looking back historically at what Srila Prabhupada has done, spread Krishna Bhakti all over the world. Well, obviously he's empowered by Krishna to do so. And it's not just like some shopkeeper who miraculously becomes a great sadhu. No, it's predicted in the Shastra that there will be a sin bhakti, I forget the exact Sanskrit, a commanding general from the staff of Lord Chaitanya who will spread bhakti all over the world. That's Prabhupada. Clearly, without a doubt. So Vallabhacharya spoke this verse, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi Tarpavartana, after meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and seeing him. But he didn't completely understand that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not just Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi. He's Krishna himself, spreading the Sankirtan movement and empowering others, and specifically his commanding general, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was asked one time, Prabhupada, exactly who are you? In terms of your relationship with Krishna, and who are you in the spiritual world? And Prabhupada said, if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. So different people speculate in different ways. But that's what Srila Prabhupada said about the matter. You can't understand. Everyone has their own level of consciousness and their own ability to understand things. And Srila Prabhupada is indicating this is beyond what you can understand, so don't bother. Don't go there. Don't speculate either. Although sometimes his godbrothers used to say that he was a cowherd boy. That's their thought. Yes. Swami Maharaj, yes, he is Sakya Ras. Which is indicated in one of the prayers that Prabhupada wrote aboard the Jaladuta in 1965. He said, today I'm feeling a great longing for you, my dear Lord, missing you. And then he mentions about running and frolicking in the fields and rolling on the ground with Krishna and the cows. So maybe, we don't know for sure, but we know he's the commanding general who is specifically deputed and given the task to spread the Sankirtan movement far and wide, which he has done. So that's good. And this is the only way to counteract what's going on in contemporary society, is the vigorous propagation of the Sankirtan movement. Because what is going on is you have these demons and rascals in charge of governments all over the world, and they're propagating their own irreligion. There's a verse in the 12th canto that refers to them as the Dasyu, which means rogues and thieves, and Prabhupada calls what their program is Dasyu Dharma, the religion of thieves and rogues. And then he directly criticizes, very pointedly, says these modern executive heads of state, they're just tax collectors. Now, the tax collector traditionally is not the exalted, leader that everyone follows. He just gets the money, just extracts the money. However, he can, by hook, by crook, by threat, by law, get the money from the people. So that's not a real leader. A real leader is a Rajarsi, a saintly king who himself follows religious principles, which none of the modern leaders do, and he paves the way for others in society to follow those religious principles, which no one is doing now. No one is following in any capacity, even remotely. And when it comes to the Krishna consciousness movement, this is what separates the men from the boys, so to speak, is that those who actually follow the principles of Krishna consciousness and actually practice Krishna consciousness, those are the authorized persons to populate the Krishna consciousness movement and to preach. And others who don't follow and who don't practice, well, they're not qualified. It's that simple. And Prabhupada points this out in one place where he says that we are not in the export business. Oh, you become Krishna conscious. You go back to Godhead. Meanwhile, I'm staying here in the material world. I'm going to enjoy. In other words, I'm not going to follow any of the practices. I'm going to live a sense gratification life. But you, I'm telling you, you must be Krishna conscious. No, this is nonsense. This is nonsense. Well, we see this is going on. So that is a type of hypocrisy and insincerity, and that's called Kaitava Dharma. But the whole Bhagavat treatise, from the very beginning of the Bhagavat, the second verse, Dharma Projita Kaitavo, that Kaitava Dharma, cheating, bluffing, which is like these so-called Christian groups that we encounter, they aren't following any religious principles. They're not following their own religious principles. What to speak of standard religious principles as enunciated in the Vedas, they're not following anything. Yet they're chastising everyone and saying that you're a false religion, and their life they live is a complete that flies in the face of what the teaching of their so-called religion is. But when I was a young man, I was asked one time to go preach to this class at Emerson College in Boston. Emerson College, a very kind of boutique, liberal arts, rich kids, kind of a school, very prestigious. So the classroom, they're very liberal in the classroom. And they're like kind of loose and a little unorganized. This is in the 70s when such things were going on. I don't know if it still is now or not. And it was a religion class. And so there was one dude in the class, and he had, really long hair and unshaven. And at that time, they were very liberal. They let you smoke in the classroom. And so this guy was smoking in the classroom during the class, stinking the whole place up. And nobody was very happy about it either. Not the other kids. They weren't happy about it. They didn't like him. And it turned out he was the Christian. Like I knew it. How could he be otherwise? And so he raised this big challenge. And it was so easy to defeat. I said, well, someone who's really a Christian who really wants to follow the teachings of Jesus, first of all, he wouldn't smoke. Second of all, he would be clean and neat. Third of all, he wouldn't irritate and be obnoxious to everyone around him, proclaiming himself to be a follower of a religion where he is clearly a hypocrite and doesn't follow anything. He's just a rascal with a big mouth. And then when I said that, the whole classroom, they applauded, except for him. They all applauded, like, yeah, we hate this guy, you know. So he's criticizing everybody and saying he's a big Christian, you know, and he's just like a turkey. And the classroom erupted into spontaneous applause because, like, yes, he has been exposed now. We knew all along that he was fake and bogus. And then that was the end of his argument and challenge. He's going to shrunk back into his seat, you know, and put that cigarette out, will you? You're stinking up the place. You know, the classroom wasn't that big. It was not even as big as this temple room, which is not that big. So that's just typical. Mostly, you find in the the evangelical movement, these so-called leaders and preachers who are more like carnival barkers. You know, the barker at the carnival, he's got a little microphone and he's barking out, you know, his little sales pitch and trying to get people over to his table to buy his stuff or whatever. He's a barker. He's a hawker. He's a carny. He's a professional huckster. And that's what we see these prominent, especially the televangelists. They're real hucksters. There was one fellow in Dallas, I forget his name, but he had his own TV network and everything, and that was very successful. And he would do this thing where he would start to speak in tongues. But some of the words he used, he wasn't speaking in tongues, but he had like a little script of words he had made up. But some of them sounded like Sanskrit. Kadamba Basoya Mahama. You know, but it sounded like Sanskrit almost, like he'd looked it up somewhere and gotten some mantras. And he would speak in tongues and say all these nonsense syllables and then go back into his spiel. And he would become possessed and start to speak speak in tongues. You know, it was just a complete fake act. So obvious. I mean, just a performance. And it was really quite hilarious. And then, but people would send him money after that performance? Wow. Man, what a bunch of marks. And I just happened to see one time something somewhere. I was going door to door, so the TV would be on. And there was one of these daytime shows, like the interview shows, whatever the name of the person is, the Jane Smith show, right? And so they had this woman up there, and she claimed that she would go into trance, and then she would channel this spirit, who I don't know what his name was, like Voodoo Mahama or something, and she would, and so she could do this on demand, of course. So she went into this trance and started speaking in this big voice and channeling the spirit who was, like there used to be a TV show called I Dream of Jeannie, and they had this one big actor, I forget his name, real big guy with a deep voice, and he would play like the evil genie who would sometimes come after Jeannie, to take her back to the genie kingdom or whatever. I forget the guy's name. A great actor, big guy, big strong guy, and shaved head and like a big powerful voice. So she was trying to channel, give an appearance of channeling this guy, and it was so foolish and hilarious. And the audience was just completely cracking up, like, this is so bogus. Any fool can see this is just but she was taking herself very seriously, but no one else was. Everybody was just laughing. But come on, what a joke this is. So that's what goes on in the name of religion. It's not religion at all. It's Kaitava Dharma at best. And it's just, evil at worst. And people are doing this. Some people are claiming that, in the name of their religion, they're killing a bunch of other people who are the non-believers. They're killing them, flying airplanes into, the Pentagon and big commercial buildings and killing as many people as possible, killing the infidels. That's not religion. That's not even their religion that they're claiming to follow. It has nothing to do with it. Not a thing. The first principle of Dharma or religion, Prabhupada says, is to observe the duties of the four orders as enjoined by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is a verse. Varnashram charvata purushena parakpuman Vishnu rajate panta nanyatat toshakaranam, which appears in the Madhya Lila chapter 8, verse 58 of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which we quoted that verse and read from the purport recently. And there's one striking statement Prabhupada makes in that purport, is that the real thing is that one should center one's life around the devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not bluffing, not cheating, not, doing some nonsense activities, not performing, not breaking the four regular principles. And so there are those who do that. Prabhupada even wrote in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that there are demons in the dress of Vaishnavas in this Krishna consciousness movement. And they are demons by their nefarious activities. Chandrika's nodding her head. That statement is not meant to just say that one should think that way about one's ex-spouse or whatever. He done me wrong. But this is going on, as we are fond of quoting that song from Led Zeppelin. Lying, cheating, hurting, that's all you seem to do. And then the punchline is, your time is going to come. In other words, you're going to get your karma for your nefarious activities. It's going to come back and bite you. So you think you're going on now and you're all happy and you're all fun and, but no, that is not the case. Your time is going to come where these cheaters and liars and bluffers and evildoers. But when the leaders of human society are such, then what chance does anybody have of finding out what is the truth? Even sincere people, sincere spiritual people, Prabhupada mentions this as purport, they'll just have to leave their homes because of the harassment of the demon governments, taxation, tariffs. Who pays the tariffs? Not the foreign companies that are sending their goods over here. No, the consumer pays the tariff. The tariff is not on the foreigners or the importers. The tariff is on the consumer. The tariff is on the back of the people. It's a punishment for the people themselves. And so, and they want to say, make America great again. What did you tell us, Damodar, since one other country people had, they were saying, MAGA, make America go away. Or someone else said, it should be called MAS, make America shit again. Masa, because America was founded originally on the principles of in God we trust. And therefore the saying goes, in God we trust, all others pay cash. And in God we trust is on the money, but everybody else, you have to pay in advance. So that is the business of the tax collector. One of Jesus's followers was a tax collector. What was his name? Simon? Was Matthew a tax collector? So he joined with Jesus, but nobody likes the tax collector. Like, Jesus, what are you doing? What are you getting this guy for? He's the tax collector. Everybody hates him. And in traditional societies, what the tax collector would do is he would collect all the taxes from everybody and harass them and threaten them and bring soldiers or whatever. And then he would take the money and he would give a certain portion of that money to the government as a tax, and the rest he would keep for himself as his profit. And therefore he was very rich and very hated by everyone. So Prabhupada is saying that the modern executives, they're just tax collectors. So that's not a very flattering statement if you analyze the implication of that. It's not that like he's some bureaucrat or official in a government post, but he's actually a rogue who's cheating everybody to line his own pockets. And the very people that are elected in a democracy to serve the people are actually the ones who are taking advantage of the people to line their own pockets in various illegal ways. And sometimes they get caught and they make a big stink about it. Or sometimes it's revealed that, they had an affair with a member of their own political staff or something. There was something on the news this morning about that. So these things are going on because people are not trained or taught or have good leaders to set the example of what is Dharma. But Srila Prabhupada is a perfect follower of Dharma, and he is training us, teaching us also to become followers of Dharma. And purity is the force from that following of principles. Then there can be effective transmission of the spiritual potency to others, but it is not export business. You become Krishna conscious. I'm preaching to you now, and now I'm going to go enjoy sense gratification, but you take it up. Or, you read this book. What's in the book? I don't know. I never read it. I kind of know a little bit, but, you just read the book. I'm just selling the book, that's all. But what are you teaching? What's the idea? And instead of admitting that I don't know, they'll just make up something they heard somewhere, some bogus New Age philosophy. I've heard this, devotees do, so-called devotees, who are, preaching all kinds of nonsense that is not from Prabhupada's books, that's for sure. Because I've read Prabhupada's books thoroughly enough to know if somebody's saying some nonsense, that's not from Prabhupada's books. That may be your philosophy, something that you like, or you heard on the radio, or you read in a Carlos Castaneda book when you were a teenager, or whatever. Be Here Now. We talked about that before. Carlos Castaneda, The Yaqui Way of Knowledge, those books were popular. Scientology, it was a popular book. I read that book when I was a teenager, the Dianetics, the Science of Scientology. All bogus nonsense. Actually, the guy that started Scientology, he was actually a science fiction writer, science fiction novelist, L. Ron Hubbard. And quite a bizarre fellow. Spent most of his time living in isolation on a yacht somewhere offshore. And he came up with this whole, it's not a religion, but it could be registered as a religion in modern world, because even though there's no religious principles, well, it's science. But actually Krishna consciousness is the science of God. Because bhakti is a scientific process. How to become purified, how to approach God, how to love God. That is bhakti. And beginning in this chapter, as we're beginning to push a little further into the 5th canto now, here into the 2nd chapter, the first chapter was about Maharaj Priyavrata. Now he is renouncing his kingdom to go off and perform austerities. And his son, Maharaj Agnidra, is taking up the mantle of offering protection to the inhabitants of Jambudweep. Now, what is Jambudweep, you may ask? Is that like a jumbo dweep, a big dweep? Dweepa means island. It is a big island, but according to the Vedic cosmological paradigm, in the center there is this giant Mount Meru, and it's surrounded by a number of dweepas. Sometimes it said 4 dweepas, or sometimes 9 dweepas. And Jambudweep is one of the dweepas, and that is the dweepa where human beings can actually achieve self-realization. That's the field of activities. And within each dweepa, there are different varshas. And one of the varshas within Jambudweep is called Bharatvarsha. And that's the name of India, Bharatvarsha. Now, if you Google Jambudweep, they'll say, well, some people say that Jambudweep is India. But a part of Jambudweep, there is Bharatvarsha. And this 5th canto goes into an elaborate description, of which I admittedly am not an expert, haven't studied thoroughly. Cosmology not being my particular focus in Krishna consciousness. But there are different varshas within Jambudweep, like Ilabhrita Varsha. There's different varshas where you have different personalities in charge, and different qualities and characteristics of life. But within the Earth planet, you have these, it's primarily the most important varshas of Bharata Varsha. And then there are like different dweepas or islands or continents within the Earth planet. But that is part of Jambudweep. So Maharaja Nidra, he's the ruler of Jambudweep. And it is his duty, as he learned also from his father, to treat the praja, the citizens, as if they were his own children and look after their welfare, especially their spiritual welfare. And Prabhupada mentions here in the purport that such a father strictly observes whether his sons are performing their duties. And sometimes he also punishes them. So if they're not following, they have to be corrected and following. Now, there's one pastime where Jagannath Mishra, the father of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was put into a position where he had to instruct his son, Nimai, little Nimai, who was being naughty. We discussed this on the lead up to Gaur Pranim, that sometimes Nimai was doing some little naughty different things. And the duty of the father is to correct the son, but out of his affection for his son, and after all, he's like Nanda Maharaj, and Nimai Pandit is Krishna, he doesn't want to chastise him or correct him or do anything. He just wants to give him love. But no, you have to, because you're the father and it's your duty. And that's external. But internally, he's a devotee in love with Krishna, who wants to serve Krishna in love. And he doesn't want to do his fatherly duties of chastising him and instructing him. And then Srila Prabhupada explains further that it is the duty of the spiritual master to chastise the disciple. So when the disciple hears this, he's like, oh, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to get chastised. But those instructions are necessary, and Prabhupada says that chastisement is good for the disciple. It is good for the disciple. And my own experience was I had this band instructor in college. It was the campus jazz band, big band, saxophones, trumpets, trombones, piano, guitar, bass, drums, big band. And the band leader, he was like kind of a nut, given to fits of anger, and really shouldn't probably have been up in front of a group of kids. But he was, and he was always picking on me. I was playing bass. Bass, you're Russian. Bass, you're dragging. Bass, what are you doing? You're not listening, and it's like right in front of the rest of the band, right? And specifically he had like picked on me. He was the guy. And at first I thought, oh, this guy's just crazy, he's a nut. And then later it occurred to me that actually he was the best teacher I ever had. I learned more from him than any other teacher I ever had in my whole life. Even though he was apparently kind of like, obsessed with himself. He wrote one chart for the band, and the name of the chart was Devil's Rage. And everybody knew he was the devil and he was raging. And it was very like, very dissonant music, And so it was very funny, that title, because all the kids in the band laughed because, we knew who the devil was. And he was always raging. But later I realized I learned more in that environment from him chastising and criticizing than I'd ever learned from anybody who was nice to me. Similarly, there's one story of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. There was one person, a scholar, who always used to argue with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He was not submissive, and all the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, they were very upset with this guy. They did not like this guy at all. He's always arguing with Guru Maharaj. He never submits. He never listens. He's very unreasonable. He's got all wrong points of view. And then finally, this man, this scholar, he passed away. And then Bhaktisiddhanta was lamenting and he was crying. And then, Guru Maharaj, why are you crying? Oh, because this Panditji has passed away. You're crying for him? But he always argued with you. He never was submissive. He was a Mayavadi. He was so bad. Why are you crying for him? And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, he was my friend. And the devotees couldn't understand this at all. So we want to apply our mundane concepts to Krishna consciousness. Everything is beautiful. And that's how our life should go on. But not in the material world. That's not where we are. I mean, in Krishna Loka, there are no demons. There are rumors of demons. But no one is fighting and arguing and putting up with demons and clashing against them. That kind of preaching is only you find in the material world. But Bhaktisiddhanta lamented, he was my friend. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada had a relationship with this Dr. Patel in Bombay, and he would come on the morning walks at Juhu Beach. And Dr. Patel was always arguing with Prabhupada. He was always taking the side of rascal Mayavadis. And the devotees were very upset by this too. And sometimes him and Srila Prabhupada would get in very heated arguments. They would get in such heated arguments that Dr. Patel wouldn't come and speak to Prabhupada for days. And after a while, Prabhupada said, where is Patelji? Why is he not coming? And devotees could not understand this relationship, but Prabhupada was preaching to him and therefore considered him a worthy candidate, a fit candidate to be preached to, even though the devotees were not liking it one bit. Why is this man disturbing Prabhupada? He shouldn't be coming on the walk at all. So that ties in with the statement that we referred to in a previous class, Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Vigenamda Bhujaya. That by your material logic and your material understanding, you cannot approach understanding the mind of a Vaishnava, an elevated Vaishnava. Certainly, Srila Prabhupada, he's elevated Vaishnava. And so just to understand, to think, oh, I know Prabhupada, I know what he's thinking, I know what he's doing. No, you can't understand. And certainly a materialist can understand. They think that a pure devotee is motivated by the same things that motivate them. Atmavan manyate jagat. One who's a rascal, he's thinking, oh, this sadhu, he's a rascal just like me. He's motivated by the same things, by sense gratification. And they think, oh yes, this guru, he's just trying to get all the money from the disciples. But that's what the cheaters are doing. Srila Prabhupada, yes, he wants to get all the money from everybody and use it to spread Krishna consciousness, not for his own sense gratification. So these things are going on, and we have to understand the science based on these paradigms that Srila Prabhupada is teaching us. And sometimes it's very surprising and very direct what Prabhupada says, as is also sometimes the sayings of Chanakya Pandit. He's not exactly Machiavelli, but he says some very stringent and severe things that are actual truthful understandings of the way the material energy works. And one of the things we were just discussing the other day, that one should not be too close to the king, nor should one be too far away from the king. One should not be too close to the guru, nor should one be too far away from the guru. And one should not be too close to the river or too far away from the river. So why are these statements like that? Too close to the king, you might get punished. Even if you didn't do anything wrong, but you're, within that atmosphere of the court, and there's a lot of drama and jealousy and treachery, you could get caught up in it. But if you're too far away from the king, then you don't have the protection that the king and his government offers. Same with the river. You're too close to the river. When it floods during the rainy season, you could get washed away and wiped out. You could drown. But if you're too far away, you don't get the benefits of the river, which is what? The water for agricultural purposes, for drinking. All great civilizations spring up on the banks of rivers. And the spiritual master, if you're too close to the spiritual master, you may become familiar and consider him an ordinary person and then commit offenses. And if you're too far away from him, then you're not getting the mercy. You're not getting the instruction. You're off somewhere, ignoring what is being transmitted. So these are instructions from Chanakya Pandit that are very practical instructions in spiritual life. So like I say, we're not a bunch of Machiavellians, but when dealing with the material world, Prabhupada says, when dealing with cunning cheaters, you have to be also cunning. You have to be like a cunning cheater yourself in order not to get cheated and not just say, yeah, it's just all cool and be just a naive fool. No. Prabhupada said, they try to take advantage of me, but I'm an old Calcutta boy. He grew up on the streets of Calcutta. He's seen everything. So that's what he said in New York. He was in New York and he was alone and on the streets of New York, and there's so many rogues and rascals and hucksters and cheaters and pickpockets and all kinds of things. But yeah, he knew all that in Calcutta. He said, oh yes, those are my neighbors. These are my neighbor men. I know all about them. All right, so we'll stop here. Questions, comments, realizations?
Just an observation. In the purport, Prabhupada was talking about drought in Kali Yuga.
Oh, yeah.
And that the rains are necessary to produce food grains. And just last week, I was reading where over 70%, I think it's 73% of the food grains grown in the United States are used for feeding livestock.
Animals for slaughter.
Meant for slaughter. So it's just compounding the already bad situation. Yeah.
And the water too.
So-
They take a lot of water.
Oh, it takes a lot of water
Mhm.
to produce slaughtered animals,
Right. So already the rains are diminished.
especially here in the West.
Yeah.
We're in like a 20-year drought now.
Mhm. So yeah, it's just, you can see it accelerating.
Yeah, and they're all concerned about global warming. Well, this is right out of the Bhagavatam. It's going to get hotter. It's going to get drier.
Mhm.
It's going to get a lot hotter. It's going to get a lot drier. You ain't seen nothing yet. Oh, but if we act now, we can counteract climate change. Now, there's another thing you can do, except for to perform sacrifice.
Mhm. Right.
Then rains will come. That's what you can do. But like, controlling industrial production and this and that, it doesn't work. Those are material formulas. The real formula is you have to perform sacrifice. Then the rains will come. and then you can produce food grains.
And the food grains are used for sacrifice.
Yeah, and they're also used for human society, not to feed animals that then you can wantonly slaughter and drink their blood, eat their flesh. Did you want to say something, Parameshwar?
You spent a little bit of time talking about the governments and being off. I remember when I was new, I read Prabhupada's books and a lot of what he other things that he wrote and spoke. And I came across this thing that said there was I believe a letter where a devotee started a TSKP bus distributing books. He says if you have at least 100 of these, you'll have a chance to take over the government. Meaning the people will be so in knowledge that they'll want a Krishna conscious leader.
Yeah, they'll change the government themselves.
Yeah.
Not that we'll take over, but that
Right.
they will kick out the rogues
Yeah.
and bring in
That's
proper
right.
persons.
Exactly.
Yeah, we may not see that in our lifetimes.
You were saying about Bhaktisiddhanta arguing with this guy and Prabhupada too. And isn't it kind of like they were the devil's advocates and then they could argue? Because a lot of times Prabhupada wanted a devotee to take the position of a devil's
Yes,
advocate just so he could
He would
preach.
say, what do they say? And then
Yeah.
they would present the argument and he would defeat it.
Yeah.
Yes. There's the wonderful science of Krishna consciousness. All right, so we'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.